Hi, I'm Rick Morris. I'm going to show you how I make these snowman Christmas ornaments. These ornaments are great to give out at Christmas time as small gifts to friends and relatives. They are very quick, they are very easy to turn, and obviously they don't take up much material. I'll start off with a small block of scrap material, whatever I happen to have on hand, preferably a light colored wood. It is a snowman. It's about 1.5 inches on the side and it's about 3 to 4 inches long. I'll put that between centers on the lathe and rough it down to make a small blank like this. It's got a tenon on one end. This is to fit into a scroll chuck. And once it's mounted in the chuck, I'm going to turn the snowman shape just like this. That's what most of this video is about, is turning the snowman shape. After it's shaped, I'll sand it, I'll finish it, I'll part it off, and then we'll go to the workbench and I'll show you how we do the completing steps on it, which is to put on a face and put on a hanger. So let's get started. I'm going to be making this Christmas ornament out of a blank just like this. This one, as a matter of fact. This was 1 1/4 inches square cross section, which I roughed down to round. Between centers, there's the marks from the drive center. On this end, I turned a tenon about 3/4, 5/8 inch to fit into my chuck here. This is a Nova MIDI chuck. It's a very nice chuck, not very expensive at all. It's not quite as convenient as the chucks that use a single tool for tightening. This one requires 2 bars, but like I say, it's a good price. It's very good chuck. I've had this one for years. I liked it enough to buy another one to put a different size set of jaws on for some of my smaller turnings. This, I think, is the number 1 set of jaws. It's about 3/4 of an inch. It just works out very well for this size turning. What I'll be doing first is bringing this back down to round. Anytime you unchuck it and rechuck it, it never is perfectly in center again. So I'm going to put my homemade tool rest in here. Top of it level about with the center of the piece, very close to the chuck, because eventually I'm going to be cutting in right there, parting it off. And I'm going to use a 1-inch skew chisel to bring it down around. You can see it's a little bit out of round, a little bit wobbling there. Now, you don't really have to do this step because the entire length of the piece is going to be turned to make the snowman, which of course in the process of doing that will bring it back and round. However, I like to start with it, no vibration on it, and as you saw, I had a little flat spot up here that I needed to get rid of, which is gone. So we're looking good now. First cut I'm going to make, and almost all the cuts I make, will be with this, a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. I need to remove the tool marks from this end of the workpiece. And at the same time, this is going to be the top of the hat. I want to round it over just a little bit like this. I need to lower the rest just a wee bit there. There. I want to cut away enough to get rid of those tool marks. Okay, that's looking pretty good. As I said, I want it domed just a little bit. This being the top of the ornament, I need to put a hole right there. Now I'm going to back the camera out a little bit so we can see the tailstock and the Jacob's chuck. I've already got a Jacob's chuck mounted in the tailstock. So I'm bringing the tailstock up. I want to get it to the point where the drill bit's almost at the workpiece. Lock the tailstock in position. This is the tailstock. This is a Jacob's chuck. Got a number 2 Morse taper on it that fits into the quill of the tailstock. And I've got a 3/32 drill bit in there, which is the right size for the hangers that I make. And so I'm just going to drill this in. I'm not going to drill it in quite all the way. It's about 3/4 of an inch. I need a little less than that. And I don't want to leave any marks on the surface from the nose of the Jacob's chuck. Now you notice I did not reduce the speed of the lathe. If I were drilling a larger hole, say a 1/4 inch or larger than that, I would set the lathe speed down to about 400, my lowest speed. But with this very small hole like this, I haven't found it to be necessary. It just doesn't generate that much heat, where a 1/4 of it or something will generate a lot of heat. All right, going to remove the tailstock. Change the camera angle again to get started with the turning. I've made a lot of these. It's Christmas time. I'm making a bunch of them to give out to relatives and friends. So before I ever started doing any turning, or at least after I turned the first one, I made a little template here so I can mark out the major cutting points on the blank. This is going to be waste right here. I'll be parting it off down here. This is the body of the Snowman. This is the head of the Snowman. And anything left over up here is going to be the hat. Now, I made this one a little longer than I normally do, just to see how a tall hat looks. I'm going to mark the brim right here. That'll be another cut to make. And I'm going to start cutting with a narrow parting tool. Now, you can use any kind of parting tool, a diamond parting tool or a fluted parting tool or anything. I found the narrow parting tool works really well with this because it is a small piece and everything is close together. I'm going to start in right here. I'm only got to cut in maybe a 1/4 of an inch. That will eventually become the bottom, and that's where I'll part it off at. Now right here, this is the division between the body and the head. I'm only got to cut in about a 1/4 inch deep. Right here, between the head and the brim, again about a 1/4 inch deep. And above the brim, I'm going to cut in farther because the top of the hat where it meets the brim, I want it to be fairly narrow. It looks good that way. It looks kind of whimsical that way. Alright, that's far enough. I'm going to go back to the 3/8 inch spindle gouge. You can start anywhere on here you want to. I always start at the bottom. I need to lower the tool rest just a wee bit. Nah, that's too much. Okay. What I'm going to be turning here is just a big fat bead on a spindle, just like any spindle work. So, start out at the edges, roll the gouge in the direction of the cut. I want to end up with a nice spherical shape there, just as if somebody had rolled up a big ball of snow to make the snowman body. Now keep working it in towards the center, rolling the gouge out to the edge. That's pretty good. Now, this is the head right here. The head needs to be a smaller diameter than the body. And so I'm going to use, in this case, a diamond parting tool. It's got a 1/4 inch wide blade on it, just to reduce the diameter of the head. Now, you can also do this with the spindle gouge, and it works fine. Just occasionally when I do it with a spindle gouge, I'll cut across this way and damage the brim of the hat. This is a little safer from that aspect of it. So I'm just going to reduce this some. That's good right there. And now we're back to cutting a bead again. A little more difficult. We've got that ledge of wood right there for the brim, but it's not all that hard really. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Clean this up again. Alright, so we've got the body, we've got the head, this is the brim. The brim needs to be a little smaller diameter than that Maybe it's so that it doesn't extend quite so far out from the head. Really a matter of taste, of course. Going to narrow it down just a little bit there. All right. The top of the hat. This is the maximum diameter here. This is the minimum diameter. And rather than just making a straight cut in between those 2 points, I'm going to make it as a curve because I think the hat looks cuter that way. So I'm going to start right here at the base and just start nibbling away at the diameter of the wood there. As I said, I deliberately made this blank a bit longer than normal because I wanted to make a really tall hat on this guy. I've found that the top of the hat usually looks best when it's about the same diameter as the brim. So I'm going to take it down a little bit. That looks good. And continue my curve there. All right, I like it. Now, the brim, it's rough right on the top there. It probably doesn't show. It's also a little bit too fat vertically here. I want to narrow it down and smooth that edge right there. And for that, I'm going to use a paring cut with a skew chisel. And just take it in right here, straight in, just like that, and clean up that edge right there. And I'm going to do the same thing down on the bottom of the brim, even though that doesn't really matter all that much. It's not that visible. Okay. And smooth this over. Alright, we're looking pretty good. Let's take a closer look here. Check here first for chip out. It looks okay. Check here. Sometimes this being a fairly thin piece, it'll split and splinter up pretty badly, but it looks okay. And then check the maximum diameters here and here to see that you don't have any flats left over from where it was roughed out, say incompletely. So it's looking pretty good, and we're about ready to start sanding on it. I'm going to make one more cut down at the bottom. The narrow parting tool again. I'm going to cut right into the bottom here. Not all the way through. Just enough so that when I sand it, I can sand over the edge. If I wait until later and make that final cut, I have a rough edge there at the bottom of the sander.